this documentary about how AI systems can really entrench these biases. What would you like to see? How can we change this?
I think what I'm seeing, so I work for an ethics in AI institute, right? And what gives me hope is people like you, Joy, people like us sitting here on a hot Saturday afternoon watching this documentary and actually caring about bias, about justice in AI. And I think that, this is proof we're all here, we care. And I can also see, there are people in government, there are researchers, there are people in tech who really care about this issue by now.
And Alexis, what can companies do?
Great question. I think really for these types of issues, there's no solution better than a local one. I think that can be really hard for designers and engineers and founders to take because, we're ideas people, we want to build things, and we're really incentivized to scale, especially with kind of the funding models behind a lot of tech. But I think it really takes sometimes recognizing that you don't have the best idea, so a lot of humility is what I'd like to see in fellow founders.
And Joy, what's on your wish list? How can we do this in a meaningful way?
One thing that's on my wish list are biometric rights and also creative rights. And so much of what we've seen with generative AI systems has been built on top of what some might call stolen data. Others might say contested data, depending on how far you want to go with the terminology. And so I think about what would creative rights look like, right, where there's consent to use that work. So much of what we see that inspires awe in AI is a reflection of what humanity has done. And I think another critical piece on that is control, agency. Maybe you want to play around with these tools, but you actually want to play around with something that was built ethically.
So what do you think is really missing from this conversation around AI governance?
So I think what's missing from the conversation is still people generally, and it's something I've been hearing a lot now. We've got a lot of events in the Institute for Ethics in AI with different people, and I think what we are missing, the EU AI Act is the first regulatory framework for AI that we are seeing, and human rights is at the center of that, right? Values are at the center of that, and it's a risk-based approach where we're saying, okay, particular AI systems will be high risk because they will be used, for example, for emergency services and how ambulances get dispatched. So that's how this framework works, and it's been a huge effort to get that off the ground, and that's really great, and it's one thing that gives me hope, but we now have to see how it actually works out in practice, right? And how good a framework it is. And I think there's a huge opportunity here and a need to really work with grassroots groups so that we can understand where the risks and the harms are and the opportunities, and how can we leverage these opportunities more for governance.
Brilliant. And Joy, how about in the US? What's happening right now, and what kind of questions should we be asking as we deploy this technology in public services?
So they came out with this brilliant framework called an AI Bill of Rights. So it's talking about the right to safe and effective tools. Like you're saying, it should work in the first place. The right not to be discriminated against when it comes to AI systems. The right of notice, data privacy, and I think even more importantly, human alternatives, just in case it doesn't work how we thought it was going to work. So the landscape in the US under this administration, we've seen a lot of rollbacks. For example, the Biden administration had executive orders. Actually, in the epilogue of Unmasking AI, I talk about the roundtable meeting I had with President Biden and some of the concerns that were brought up. At the same time, though, we are seeing movement at the state level. So there was a big bill that got passed in the US. Some say it's beautiful, others saw it was maybe not so beautiful. But in the push for that bill, there was actually introduced a 10-year moratorium on any AI regulation. And that would have effectively gutted so much of the progress that we've made since the film.
Now I want to hear from all of you. One thing about AI that keeps you up at night, that people should really be paying attention to, but maybe aren't. And one thing that gives you hope. Alexis, do you want to kick off?
I have a little bit of insecurity about talking about the hope for AI, and that's, I think, why I ask my community a lot about how they're using it, because I don't really. But what keeps me up at night, I think, just because of the community that I serve is like how it's impacting people's jobs. And in the United States, your job is tied to your health care, is tied to so many things. So it's really like life and death for a lot of people.
And what gives you hope?
Oh, what gives me hope?
Dr. Hope, what gives you
I
hope?
think young people, to get back to, some of the conversations that Jaleesa and I have about, her work and all the times I get to work with students. I think they're really creative, and I think tough times make for really creative people and people who can think of new ways to solve problems.
Caroline, would you like to go next?
Yeah, what does keep me up at night is the power of private corporations and that AI is in their hands. What gives me hope? I think what gives me hope is that I also see opportunities in AI to build on what really matters to us as humans.
And Joy.
What keeps me up at night? Lethal autonomous weapon systems, because we're at a time where some will say the future of peace, the other side of that is the future of war, where generally the argument is if you have more precise systems, fewer people will die, but we've never had a military technology introduced that led to fewer deaths. That's just not what history shows. So that certainly keeps me up at night. And now that we let that sink in, what gives me hope? I would like to end with a poem on what gives me hope. And this is a poem that I actually wrote to the Brooklyn tenants because they inspired me, and you saw some of their journey in the documentary. To the Brooklyn tenants, resisting and revealing the lie that we must accept the surrender of our faces, the harvesting of our data, the plunder of our traces. We celebrate your courage, no silence, no consent. You show the path to algorithmic justice requires a league, a sisterhood, a neighborhood, a screening at Rhodes House, hallway gatherings, Sharpies and posters, coalitions, petitions, research and potlucks, dancing and music. Everyone playing a role to orchestrate change. To the Brooklyn tenants and freedom fighters around that world, that means you persisting and prevailing against algorithms of oppression, automating inequality through weapons of math destruction. We stand with you in gratitude. You demonstrate the people have a voice and a choice. When defiant melodies harmonize to elevate human life, dignity, and rights, the victory is ours. Thank you.